I keep coming back to this thought again and again, even in my personal life right now, of like the shoulders of generations of women that we're standing on to get to this place, and having a lot of gratitude and also a lot of empathy of the fact that they did not get to experience what we're experiencing right now in the way that we are. And then it kind of switches to a sense of duty or obligation to make sure that we're as out of touch and giving as bad of advice to the next generation, because we've changed it enough that the women are like, you guys had to deal with that? And that's the advice you're giving me? The world is different now. Sit down, old lady.
Imagine what it's like as a Black woman coming up in the workplace, and now you're CEO, right? What I'm really hopeful about is that those experiences, if they're already business smart more than white men, maybe because they have an awareness of a negative experience and what it feels like, where white men don't. Like, they just show up to the party and they're like, come on in, right? Maybe that will change the way businesses operate in a positive way too.
I'm Margaret Kelsey.
And I'm Devin Bramhall.
And this is Don't Say Content,
a show created in partnership with Share Your Genius. Margaret, why are you late today? I'm so curious.
I'm helping my mom out with something, and she kept calling it a meme. And bless her heart, it's not a meme. It's just
what was it?
It's just a graphic, like an image with some text overlay on top of it. But she was so impressed. I used ChatGPT to make the image, and then I threw it in Canva and put her words on top of it that she wanted and sent it over to her. She's like, this is so incredible. And then she's like, who owns the copyright? So I had to like copy paste that to ChatGPT. The end user owns the copyright and can like sell it and do whatever you want with anything that you create from ChatGPT.
Now I want to know what she thinks an actual
I think she's like a woman in her 60s, and just that's the word that she thought it was, because we hear words and we adopt them without ever asking what they mean.
I have a section about that in my book, actually. You mentioning your mom made me think about a part of a chapter I'm actually currently writing, which is about how the B2B buyer is about to change, is already changing, but is about to change more dramatically than I think a lot of people realize.
And is that because the generations are changing of who's making purchasing decisions?
It's actually more factors than that happening at the same time. And once I started looking at the data, I came to realize that this is potentially an opportunity of the scale that we saw when like SEO became part of the zeitgeist of content strategy. And I hadn't even like realized it. I was trying to summarize, like, here's the B2B buyer now, right? Like, we've got a new kind of generation, but not just like a age generation. There's actually like several factors.
Besides age, what is changing?
So first of all, the ethnicity of the population is changing, which has been going on for a while. I think that's why white people are so scared all the time and getting more aggressive, because they're like, oh my God, we're not going to be the majority anymore. I think it was like 22 to 24. The white population stayed flat. Asian, Hispanic, and Black and African American demographics all grew. And so it was like a net loss in white people, basically. Overall drop in white American population. Obviously, because of the world we live in, a change in population doesn't mean a change in people in power, because we live in a messed up world. But there's I found the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, which was reported in January 2024, showed that Black or African American workers held 9.2% of management occupations in the US, which is small. It just is small. But the interesting thing is that pace of growth is way faster than the previous 10 years. So from 2012 to 2022, it went from like 7 point something percent to 8 point something percent. Basically increased like a little over 1% from 2012 to 2022. But from 22 to 23, it increased from 8.9% to 9.2, which again, we are
Mm.
talking very small numbers. And so I'm speaking
Yeah.
in signals here. That is still significant to me, just given that it represents a bigger jump year over year than we've seen
Yeah.
10 years before. Okay. So now
No.
we've got more diversity in the population. I'm not even going to call it progress. It's not progress, but we're seeing a signal that maybe there might be more diversity among the buying committees, right?
Yeah.
Add to that all the progressive stuff, the progress that women have made, right? So there's more enrolling in college, more getting higher degrees. That is resulting in more women in leadership roles, which I think was like 28% in C-suite positions, which is like up from 17% a decade ago. Follow me because I swear this is coming together. On top of that, there's this thing called the Great Wealth Transfer, which is like a bunch of baby boomers are going to die and they're passing it on to their spouses. And since women live longer, a lot of them are women. Basically, like women are stand to inherit like a $30 trillion over the next 5 years or 10 years or so. When I saw that, I was like, okay, wait. You start to see the signal, right? The potential signal, which is like more people who aren't white. And
White
yeah,
men.
exactly. White,
White and
right?
male. Yeah.
Then that isn't even where the opportunity is, because that's just like, okay, fine. That's just B2B buyers changing, right? And so like that's just a signal to marketers to like really get to know what you can't boil down a consumer profile in the ways that you used to, right? There isn't one marketing Mary. There's like marketing Marianne and marketing Molly. I'm stopping. I hate the whole thing. And so that's like table stakes. The really interesting thing though is that there's also data showing that women and minorities get better business outcomes than
Hmm.
the others.
Yeah. Women founders and non-white men founders have better returns for VCs even, which is the thing that always made my head spin of why are we pattern matching for what we've seen before when we have this data that says that if we invest in more diverse founders that we would actually have a better financial return.
And it's not just startups where that's true. The Boston Consulting Group did a report that said innovation revenue is 19% higher when there's above average diversity on the management team versus below average leadership diversity, and that gender diverse companies are 20% more likely to outperform their peers in long-term value creation, and that women and minority groups with at least 30% representation are significantly more likely to financially outperform those with 30% or fewer. And all of that, plus that my client that I work with, Scrubius, they focus on connecting underfunded founders with angel investors who are more likely to invest in a more more diverse group of people. She did math and found that there's like $500 billion in undeployed capital in like families and personal wealth.
Mm.
And that's like a conservative number. What I started to think about with all of that, I swear I'm so boring. I am boring. I never leave my house.
No, I mean, I think this
Yeah.
is fascinating.
So when I started to think about it, I was like, put all that together with the fact that buying committees now contain 6 to 10 people.
Mm.
And if this trend in diversity in management continues, which we were reason to think it will, right? Just by sheer population, right? And so like
Yeah.
eventually, when you think about like voters who vote people in power, those people are about to have a greater representation, a more diverse representation than they do now. And when those diverse group of people on the buying committee and leading companies, those people have better business outcomes, which means there's actually a huge economic opportunity like right around the corner. By that I mean like 5 years, 10 years, I'm sure. But like still, if I'm a company, I would be really excited about this right now, because
Yeah.
Gen Z are coming in hot and they kind of represent this reality already. They're extremely individualistic. They are more diverse. They care about more types of things, right? Like, so it's not just about power. They care about compassion and all that. And so I feel like everybody's looking over there at like AI, deep fakes, and where the credit is on stuff. And the real opportunity is about to come up, which is there is an entire new group of people to market to And if you nail it right, you nail it early, that's an opportunity the likes of which the early SEO adopters saw.
Which the underlying thing is what you've been doing before probably won't work continuously because we're gonna have to figure out if you tend to ever actually do those like marketing persona things. Like those are fundamentally gonna change, even though I personally kind of hate those. But knowing your customer base, like it's don't think that you know what that makeup is gonna be and who the influencers are gonna be. And I don't mean like social media influencers. I mean like the people that influence the decisions, right?
Yeah. If you think about just anecdotally, this next buyer, they don't care about your dumb tech product. They grew up with tech, whereas it came into our lives, so we were more enthusiastic about it.
We were like able to be like shiny object technology. And they're like, yeah, why wouldn't it work exactly how I
Yeah.
need it to?
And so the novelty of your existence isn't even a thing to benefit you, right? Like if you were a B2B SaaS brand 10 years ago, people loved you just because you existed. And now
Yeah.
they're like, all right, grandpa. A byproduct of that is that they're more discerning, right? Because they take tech for granted in all areas of their life. And so
Yeah.
they're going to be less wowed if you're a company that just slaps a .ai on your URL or puts together your like Airtable, Zapier, GPT API like powered product or whatever. They're like, I see you. Like, no, this isn't
Yeah.
actually innovation. This is just using a bunch of automation tools and stuff like that because I can't say the right
Yeah.
words. It's too technical.
And I don't have any data on this, but it does feel like this younger generation cares more about what the company stands for, what the values are, what like the meaning behind it is than fulfilling a need. And I think that could also just be a symptom too of the fact that there is so much tech out there and it's easier to build than ever, that there's no differentiation on the tech itself anymore, especially the younger generation want to hold companies, especially that they like have purchasing power and putting dollars behind, like, hold them to a standard of, "Hey, like, I wanna make sure we're value
Yeah.
aligned."
Again, I've been deep in this chapter today, so I'm just like in it. This was the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer, and it said that trust in the brand maintained the number 3 spot year over year. It like went
Mhm.
down a point, but it was still in that number 3 spot. And that was for buyers who considered it important or a deal breaker. So trust in the brand was an important or a deal breaker when making purchase decisions. But the new criteria was I trust the company that owns the brand. And
Mm.
that was now in number 8. So they're looking even up to the parent company now. I was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa." Like, it doesn't surprise me on the ground, right? Like, we all live in
Yeah.
the world right now, and we're at least I live in Williamsburg, so I'm, like, surrounded by an age range.
People that care about all the way up the chain.
Yeah, it's like I've got everything from Gen Z all the way up to, like, my people having babies, and so
But I think that's a really interesting thing if you start to think about mergers and acquisitions and things. So thinking about that of like, okay, you're a parent company, you're considering buying this brand because it's doing so well. But if your reputation as that parent company isn't a good one, you're, you know, driving a new car off the lot and losing money if you
Oh,
buy it,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah. And I just thought too, like, it's such a different world than it was when I was running animals. I was there during the years that trust in CEO was like plummeting. I was like, this is fun. But now it's going a different direction where more people trust their company to like not do the right thing, but like they are empowering CEOs more to take action if it aligns with either something related to social justice and something regarding like protecting them, which I thought was wild because the data on trust as it related to businesses, when I was reading through it, it sometimes felt like it was contradicting itself. But also by comparing trust according to level of grievance, I didn't find
Mhm.
that to be very useful. I get what they were trying to do. It was just hard for me to like really understand it as well. But either way, I think we're entering a phase of even more individualism, but like not as much in a bad way. Like I feel like we've got individualism right now in like a combative way. People are like, if you're not like me or you don't agree with me, like you're bad and wrong. What I see is like, oh, more different types of people with their own specific experiences, right? Like thinking about us as like white women coming up in the workplace. Imagine what it's like as a Black woman coming up in the workplace. And now you're CEO, right? What I'm really hopeful about is that those experiences, and not to be too optimistic, but like if they're already business smart more than white men, maybe because they have an awareness of a negative experience and what it feels like, where white men don't. Like they just show up to the party and they're like, come on in. Maybe that will change the way businesses operate in a positive way too. So it's not just about the
Yeah.
financial aspect, but also, which I think is really important, because if marketers are going to be able to succeed in a more nuanced buyer world, they're going to need someone with patience. They're going to need someone who's steady,
Hmm.
strong, and isn't threatened by things that are complex.
Or things that are new or changing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think marketing strategy
Yeah.
is going to get even more, to me, interesting. I'm personally very excited. And usually science and math don't make me that excited.
When you can use them to tell a good story, it's
Yes.
fun.
But
Yeah.
I think, like, I really see it though. You know what I mean? It's not just like I trust numbers. I feel like I'm starting to see those signals now, and I'm starting to see people like my client make big moves that haven't manifested in the world yet, that are going to fundamentally support this change that's already happening.
I think I was getting stuck on this idea that everyone's getting more individualistic. And I want to hear what your thoughts are. Is it that you think that people are getting more comfortable embracing and trusting people's differentiated life experiences? Because when I think individualistic, I think like I'm in it for me and nobody else. I'm not thinking about the collective. I'm not thinking about the collective good. So I just wanted to drill into that word because you were saying everyone's becoming a little bit more individualistic in a good way.
Yeah, I go back to like the 1990s as my default example, when the culture encouraged conformity. There was a right way to dress and a wrong way to dress. There was a cool way and a not cool way, right? And how we've slowly been migrating away from that to a point today where if you stand out in a positive way by being yourself, you're more
Yeah, and
invisible the
even
more you are.
tattoos are more acceptable, piercings are more
Yeah.
acceptable, wonky color hair.
And because all of that is more, I'm going to use the word normal. Like people culturally,
Yeah.
those things are considered more common. Let me say it like that. That even that doesn't make you stand out as much, right? And you also have these folks, us included, gravitating more towards people who have the similar beliefs or interests in them more than ever before. And so because we're all able to lean into ourselves more, reflect that out in the world, we're attracting more people who share similar interests and such to us. And so, in large part, this is already happening. What I think is cool about it is when you think about it, not in terms of maybe individualism is, but it is kind of that. It's like when you take it away from like, oh, I only care about me and I'm only fighting for me, but more like I care about the people who believe what I believe and the people like me. What you get are these like really well defined from a marketing standpoint. You almost get like, oh my God, this is so hard to say. Like Marketing Mary, right? We had to create Marketing Mary by deciding what she is. We
Yeah.
assigned her these traits. Whereas I think when you get more groups of people coming together on their own sort of like individual beliefs, those profiles will reveal themselves and marketers will have an easier time and will have to do less research figuring out what these micro communities care about and want, because they're just going to show up in the world. Because it's not
Yeah.
just about one, it's like a couple. Does that make any
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I think when you're saying individualism, I think it's tolerance and curiosity and acceptance of our own individual experiences. But at the same time, people are caring more about values and collective good than previously, which to me isn't necessarily individualistic, but it's a this merging of acceptance, tolerance, curiosity, and that we still want to drive together for some sort of collective
Yeah,
good.
like
And that businesses should be doing that too, not just and people
it's like it
organizations.
starts with the individualistic piece where it's like by being yourself, you are attracting more people to you, thus becoming more of a collective. And so
Yeah.
then you have multiple micro collectives probably coming together over some other shared thing, etc. But I like the fact that you being yourself in the world doesn't make you alone. It helps you find your
Mhm.
tribe. And
Yeah.
selfishly, from a marketing standpoint, that's really convenient.
Yeah, and I think about the fact that probably in no other time in human history, because we didn't have technology, the internet, online communities, ability to share how we feel at mass, that it makes sense that would have been the thing that brought people together because you would have been in a smaller town, village, whatever. It would be, hey, you couldn't be the odd one out, right? Odd one meant like socially ostracized rather than odd one out now. It's like, well, I can go find my tribe from the entire world rather than just from my little town.
And I think you make a good point there, especially in the conformity based on who you're around. So we were talking last time about the unfortunately bad advice I keep getting from rich white women, but it makes sense because these are folks that are a generation about older than me, and they had to conform to a
Yeah.
man's world in order to be in power. And so that's all
Mhm.
they know. They didn't
Yeah.
have, as much as I experience and still do different treatment because I'm a woman, I still get to be a woman. And I don't have to
Yeah.
pretend to laugh at dumb guy jokes. I hate to say it, but like there's space for me to stand up to them in
Mhm.
a productive way. Like I can argue, I can not share their opinion, and I won't immediately get fired or yelled at, right?
Not immediately. I keep coming back to this thought again and again, even in my personal life right now, of like the shoulders of generations of women that we're standing on to get to this place and having a lot of gratitude and also a lot of empathy of the fact that like they did not get to experience what we're experiencing right now in the way that we are. And then it kind of switches to like a sense of duty or obligation to make sure that we're as out of touch and giving as bad of advice to the next generation because we've changed it enough that the women are like, you guys had to deal with that. And that's the advice you're giving me. The world is different now. Sit down, old lady. I'm not doing it that way. Like, there's a sense of duty and obligation to like stay in it because of that, right? Because that's how change
Yeah.
happens.
I mean, I actually literally said that recently. I was like, I'm not going to do that. But you're right.
Yeah.
Cause, they really had to, in order to be in power, they had to hide in plain sight. And I guarantee that
Yeah.
power didn't look like power to them inside the actual workplace, right? In terms of how much harder they had to try, how much credit they probably had to give other people who didn't deserve it.
And how much they were not able to blend if they were working
Mhm.
mothers, not being able to blend that, or, the fact that they would probably have to almost make the male decisions of working late. And I mean, there was a study, I don't have it in front of me. I think I've talked about it on another episode too. It was about the idea of rewarding with bonuses. They gave like a group of people the ability to like deliver bonuses to this like hypothetical scenario. And one was a woman who was a top performer, did all the stuff she needed to do, and would leave on time every day. And the other one was like a man who had the same output, but like worked really late. And they were giving the bonuses more likely to go to the man than the woman, even though the output was the same because they were actually like rewarding the long hours rather than the efficiency and the ability to leave on time and have the same output.
I'm like,
And
how
it
do
was
you guys
interesting.
rule? Like, how have you been in charge for so long?
Interesting to think about, right? Like if there's two high performers and one's like nose to the grindstoning it, we still have this unconscious bias of rewarding that behavior rather than rewarding true like efficiency at the
I
task.
mean, the boys beside me got companies. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm pretty
Yep.
sure I made that money. Or like, I mean, obviously not by myself. And I think the thing that gets me really excited is like, I feel like we're still so, and maybe this is where my energy is coming from, is like out in the world, this conversation is always negative. It's always about the injustice and the unfairness. And that's correct and right in its own way, but it makes it feel hopeless, and which is also a fair feeling, especially right now. However, what has gotten me more excited is actually working for a woman. I'm constantly shocked at how logical the experience is. It's not chaotic, even when
Mm.
there's chaos around us.
It's probably a high level of emotional regulation.
Well, no, but it's also like kind of, but like there isn't a need for it because there isn't emotion being created. Like men are
Yeah.
so, in my experience in the workplace, are extremely dramatic. They
Hmm.
can't control their emotions at all. And their only way around it is to just point it at women. I mean, quite literally, my friend works at a company, and a couple weeks ago, she heard from her boss, the boss's boss, came to him, my friend, cried at dinner that they had, like a work dinner they had from a couple months ago. So out of the blue, her boss's boss comes to him and is like, this person, cried at this work dinner and it was really unprofessional. And I think you should do something about it. My friend was like, I was pregnant. Cause he also accused her of being drunk. And so it was like, I was pregnant. I was not drinking. And her boss was like, we left together. Like, you were really normal. Not only that, but nobody else, none of the other woman there didn't cry. So this man out of nowhere, like, invents this thing that didn't happen. That A is still happening, which is like, oh my God. But working with a woman, and I'm not saying that all women are like this, but even just working with you or working with Ashley, Rachel, and Katie and Amanda, like always feels easy because I'm like, oh, we're just making decisions and setting boundaries and saying what we want and figuring it out. And it's something that keeps tripping me up with Allison because I'm like, the example was we had a team meeting on Monday and I completely messed up my book delivery schedule. And it turns out that when I delivered last Monday, that was supposed to be me delivering the rest of the book.
Oh
But now they
no.
have to give me an extension. I basically have to finish six chapters in 8 days. So I was like, oh no. So I once I found out, I called Allison. I was like, here's how I'm going to handle it over the next week, right? And she was like, I support you. It's all good, etc. So we get to this team meeting on Monday and she's stressed and I'm stressed. She's going to South by Southwest. She asked me for something on a shorter timeline. And I was like, panic in my face. But the thing is, we worked it out. It could have, given our stress levels, each of us, kind
Yeah.
of in the same category too. We were with the rest of the team all able to keep it like not freak out. We didn't like our emotions didn't get the better of us because all of us stayed calm and all of us were
Yeah.
focused on the solution. My point being, like, that same conversation used to lead to a room full of adult men yelling at each other in the world that I actually experienced. And so
Yeah.
it's just such an interesting, yeah, I'm encouraged. I'm personally very excited that there are going to be different people making decisions and having money and power because so far in my experience, it's better.
Have you seen there's like a funny video skit of like the world leaders getting together after some revolution and it's all women world leaders and they like go around and it's like hunger, nope, we're good. Like climate change, nope, we're good. And then it was like any kind of like war or whatever. And then the two women are talking about, she's like, we were getting in a little bit of a fight, but I realized I was projecting on her. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, and we figured it out and we're good. And then they like wrap it up in like 5 minutes. They're like, I can't believe this used to
Yeah.
take weeks.
And I know, like, look, I know we're oversimplifying. Like, I know that with every bit of,
There needs to be space for
yeah,
everyone. And I think that when historically there has been only space for, let's say, cisgender white men, that it feels to them like they're losing because that piece of the pie, if we have more diversity, if we have more diverse perspectives, it looks like they're losing, right? It feels like they're losing. I mean, I can understand why that is. I don't think that it should be different, and I don't know how to counteract that feeling of loss.
No one can. Not a single person on the planet except for men. I don't want to say just white men, because there's other, in general, like living in, in Bali, for example, like women carry however many pounds of boulders on their head and the men sit around quite literally playing with cocks. You know what's crazy? This has been a very creepy thing for me personally. Lately, when I am in the few moments that I am not writing this freaking book that I love so much, and like scrolling through Instagram, I don't know what this is. I started to get served these videos by white men who, I am not fucking kidding you, are explaining women's emotions to them with authority. The epitome of mansplaining. They're like, listen, when you feel this way. And I think they're trying to be woke. Like, I think they're trying to like show that they understand women.
And they're not therapists.
No,
they're
just these
people.
fucking guys. And they're always good looking. I would just report them. Like, I started just reporting them as like inappropriate. It's like, this is terrible. There's a flip side of that that's really awesome. And where there's these accounts of these like beautiful men, and they're like, girl, you are fucking awesome. Like, they're just all like, like talking right. I follow them. Like,
your algorithm is hysterical.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I was feeling a little bad about not doing more proactive things and all that kind of stuff. And then I just realized that like my life right now as a woman getting a divorce that has her own career and is taking care of herself, my life in and of itself is a little bit of a radical statement right now based on what the ruling minority wants for us to live like. And so I was thinking about like my just existence in the world and my decisions and is a little bit of a protest against what their desired end game is. And so I'm trying to be peaceful with like, that's what it is right now.
Unlike the very oppressive, every decision, everything you say is like a moral thing. Like, I did it for myself. I didn't do it because I was like, now everybody has to. Like, I don't shame anybody for using Amazon Facebook.
No, I know.
I share it in that lighthearted way because I'm like, one, it was convenient for me at this time. I'm single. I don't own a home. I'm not getting divorced. I don't have a child, right? And so I did have space for it. It didn't really impact me at all. Like, once I went to do it, I was like, well, this is an errand. But it isn't something that like, I'm with you that everybody should be able to show up in the world the way they want, even if I'm not fucking doing anything. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah,
fair.
I'm just going to take care of myself, and that's enough. Keep your side of the sidewalk clean.
Okay, y'all, that's a wrap. Thank you, as always, for listening.
We'll be back next week. And just remember, you're doing great. You're doing great.
30% of you are doing great. The rest, you got to get your shit together. Come on.
You know which side you're on this week.
You know.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. But I think that's a really interesting thing if you start to think about like mergers and acquisitions and things.
I thought you said murders at first.
Murders and acquisitions. Sometimes an M&A is a murder and acquisition.